They said the mountains could hear a man's secrets if he stayed long enough. They said the wind remembered every scream it ever stole. On Wolverine Peak, the wind was screaming again, and Jedediah Holt had learned never to answer back. The gale tore through the Montana high country like a wounded animal, rattling the thick pine logs of the cabin that had been Jed's only companion for 15 long winters. He sat hunched near the stone fireplace, carving another small figure from a block of wood, his hands moving with the automatic precision of a man who had nothing else left to master. Firelight flickered across his face, throwing deep shadows into lines carved by grief and isolation. At 39 he looked far older. His dark hair streaked with early grey, hanging to his shoulders, his beard wild and untrimmed. He had stopped caring about appearances the day he lowered Mary and their unborn child into frozen Kansas earth. That man, the one who believed in mercy and tomorrows, had died with them. The cabin was no more than 20 feet square, raised by his own hands from pine logs dragged down the mountainside. Every notch and crevice packed with mud and moss spoke of stubborn resolve, of a man building not just shelter, but walls against memory itself. A rough ladder climbed to a low sleeping loft, where a straw mattress lay, buried beneath heavy fur blankets. Below, the main room held only what survival demanded. A scarred table, 2 chairs though only one was ever used, shelves stacked with dried herbs and preserved meat, rifles mounted above the door. Through the single window, glazed with real glass, hauled at great cost from Billings, Jed watched December snowfall thick and relentless. It was 1879, though calendars had long since lost meaning. Days bled together in the same hollow rhythm. Rake, work, eat, sleep, try not to dream. Outside, his horse Thunder shifted in the lean-to stable pressed against the west wall. The big black stallion was the only living creature Jed trusted. Thunder asked nothing but hay and shelter. He understood silence, respected distance, and never demanded reasons for the nightmares that sometimes drove. Jed pacing the floor until dawn. Jed set down the carving, another wolf as always, and stirred the pot of venison stew bubbling over the fire. The buck had fallen 3 days earlier, dressed and butchered with the cold efficiency of long habit. Up here, self-sufficiency wasn't a virtue, it was survival. There were no neighbors, no stores, no help coming if things went wrong. The nearest town, Cedar Ridge, lay a brutal 2-day ride through passes that killed at least one traveler every winter. Jed went there twice a year for salt, ammunition, coffee, tobacco, and whiskey. The townsfolk had learned not to linger in conversation when he appeared. They called him the Hermit of Wolverine, peak and crossed themselves when his tall frame passed by. He didn't care. Words were for people who still believed in connection, who hadn't learned the truth he carried like a stone in his chest. Caring meant loss. Love was just another way to bleed. Mary's face still haunted him, though time had softened the edges. He sometimes forgot the exact shade of her hair or the sound of her laugh, but he remembered perfectly the moment life left her eyes, taking their child with it. The drunken frontier doctor had come too late. The preacher spoke of God's plan, while Jed dug 2 graves in frozen ground. That night he burned their homestead and rode west until the mountains swallowed him whole. Here, he stripped life down to what couldn't betray him. No photographs, no mementos, no reminders of the man he used to be. The wooden wolves lined the mantle, a silent pack carved through countless lonely evenings. Wolves understood. They mated for life, hunted alone when they had to, survived by instinct and endurance. They trusted nothing beyond their own strength. Outside, the storm worsened. Montana winters froze blood and buried men without apology. But the cabin held, its thick walls and tight joints a testament to Jed's skill. He had chosen the site carefully. A south-facing slope, shielded by a granite cliff, a spring that rarely froze, game trails threading the valleys below. A man could live here forever without seeing another soul. That was the plan. Live alone, die alone. Hurt no one and be hurt by no one. The mountains demanded strength and caution, nothing more. They didn't lie. They didn't promise. When avalanches thundered or grizzlies prowled too close, the danger was honest. Jed pulled on his buffalo coat and stepped outside to check Thunder. The wind struck him like a blow, snow stinging his face. This storm felt different, angrier. Old-timers would call it a widowmaker. Thunder nickered softly as Jed forked fresh hay and broke ice from the bucket, his hands moving by memory while his mind ran through grim calculations. The firewood, meat stores, rifle condition, these thoughts kept worse ones at bay. Thoughts of children never born and a woman's touch lost forever. As he latched the stable door, he paused. The storm's voice had changed, carrying a warning that raised the hair on his neck. He thought of the stage road winding through the valley below, then dismissed it. No sane driver would be out in this. Still, unease followed him back inside. Jed barred the door, fed the fire, and returned to his chair. Carving knife whispering through wood, this wolf would be howling, head thrown back in an eternal cry to an empty sky. Like him, it would never receive an answer. The wind screamed louder, shaking the cabin. Somewhere out there, someone was learning hard lessons, but Jed had paid his price long ago. He carved and waited. The storm raged through the night. Demons of winter battering Wolverine Peak. Jed dozed fitfully, jerking awake with each violent gust. By dawn, the fury had faded, leaving a world buried in white. He forced open the door against a 3-foot drift, squinting into the glare. Silence lay heavy over the frozen landscape. Thunder's anxious whinny broke it. Jed followed the sound, rubbing the horse's neck, feeling the tension in him. Trusting the animal's instincts, he saddled up, strapped on snowshoes, and took his rifle. They moved downslope through knee-deep drifts, Jed navigating by memory alone. An hour later, Thunder halted, nostrils flaring. Jed moved ahead through the pines and stopped cold. The stagecoach lay overturned like a shattered toy, one wheel turning slowly. Snow half buried it. The horses were frozen in their traces. The driver slumped at an impossible angle. Letters and parcels spilled from a broken strongbox. Jed scanned the scene, unease deepening. This hadn't been just the wind. Then he heard it, a faint human sound beneath the hiss of snow. He followed it to a drift piled against a boulder and dug with bare hands, until he uncovered a woman curled tight, her fine wool cloak torn and soaked, her skin pale as stone. He found a pulse, faint but there. He swore softly. This was trouble. He should leave her. He didn't. He lifted her, light as a child, mounted Thunder, and turned back toward the mountain, knowing even as he did it that the storm had finally found its way inside his walls. Days passed beneath the low-timbered roof as the storm loosened its grip on the mountain. Charlotte grew stronger with each sunrise, color returning to her cheeks, warmth to her voice. She learned the rhythms of the cabin, the quiet rules of Jed's world, when to speak and when silence mattered more. Jed watched her without meaning to, the way she coaxed life back into the space he'd kept buried for 15 years. Laughter returned first, soft and uncertain, then steadier. The cabin changed, so did he, when the trail finally opened and the way to Cedar Ridge became passable. Charlotte stood at the door with her coat on, snowlight in her hair. "You could have left me," she said. Jed shook his head. "Once I found you, there wasn't any leaving." She reached for his hand and he didn't pull away. Some losses never healed, but some storms cleared the sky enough to let a man breathe again. As Thunder carried them down the mountain together, Jed realized the truth he'd been running from. Solitude might keep you safe, but it never saves you. Sometimes survival means opening the door when the storm knocks. Even the coldest hearts can thaw, if they're brave enough to let someone in.